perseverance while celebrating the accomplishments of these student athletes who represent their school and community with pride and distinction. And where Hagerty High School Husky softball team captured the Florida High School Athletic Association Class A7 state championship in 2026, demonstrating exceptional athletic ability, competitive excellence, commitment to achieving the highest standard of success. And whereas finishing as the 2025 Florida State AA Class 7A state championship runner-up, Huskies returned in 2026 with determination and resilience, overcoming the disappointment of falling short the previous season and completing their championship journey with a 2-0 victory over Weston High School at Boomba Soldiers Creek Park in Longwood, Florida, located in Seminole County. And whereas the Huskies championship performance was highlighted by an outstanding pitching, defense, teamwork, excellence, execution, reflecting the preparation and dedication and commitment to displaying throughout the season by student athletes and coaching staff. And whereas under the leadership and guidance of head coach Tom Gerling and Hagerty High School softball program has established a culture of excellence built on discipline, accountability, sportsmanship, and continued development of student athletes on both on and off the field. And whereas recent retired athletic director Jay Getty helped establish a tradition of excellence within Hagerty High School athletics, and the athletic director Jacob Calhoun now continues the legacy by supporting student athletes in the athletic program for striving success in both on and off the field. And whereas Hagerty High School Huskies softball team achieved both great pride to Hagerty High School and Seminole County by serving as an inspiration to the young athletes and reinforcing the value of perseverance, teamwork, and dedication and commitment to excellence. Now therefore be resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County that the board recognizes the commitment that Hagerty High School Husky softball team for winning the 2026 Florida State AA Class 7A state softball state championship and extends a sincere congratulations to the athletes, coaches, and families, administration, and supporters whose dedication and hard work continues to be outstanding achievement, adopted this 25th day of August 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. You would stand and be recognized. And if the athletes would sit down and let the coaches be recognized for a second, that would be awesome. You're welcome, you're welcome. Congratulations, ladies and coaches. All right, the next one will be read by Commissioner Constantine, the Lake Howell High School boys volleyball team.
As Commissioner Delory said, I mean, this is becoming a every meeting event. and today, because we wouldn't want to go all the way through the holidays, we have 4 teams. And it's just amazing that Seminole County just continues to kick butt time and time again. So I would move the resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing the 2026 Lake Howell High School boys volleyball team as state champions. Whereas Seminole County proudly recognizes the outstanding achievements of the student athletes and the positive representation they bring to the community through excellence in competition. And whereas Lake Howell High School Silverhawks boys volleyball team achieved an historic milestone by winning the Florida High School Athletic Association Class 2A State Boys Volleyball Championship in 2026, marking back-to-back state championships. And whereas the Silverhawks finished the season with a 17-game winning streak, going 27-5 overall, defeating Archbishop McCarthy 3-1 in the semifinals. The Silverhawks secured their championship in a thrilling contest against top seed Belen Jesuit, sweeping all 3 sets 27-25, 26-24, 31-29. And whereas the Lake Howell boys volleyball team overcame adversity and demonstrated resilience, determination, and composure under pressure, exemplifying the highest ideals of sportsmanship and competitive spirits. And whereas the team's success reflects the leadership of head coach Scott Lehman, whose commitment to excellence, character, and development and community pride has played a pivotal role in the program's historic achievement. And whereas the championship reflects the dedication of the coaching staff, the student athletes, the families, the school administrators, and supporters whose collective effort contributed to the remarkable success. And whereas the achievement has brought significant recognition to Seminole County and serves as an inspiration to youth throughout the community to pursue excellence in both on and off the court. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, do hereby congratulate the Lake Howell High School boys volleyball team for winning the 2026 Florida High School Athletic Association Class 2A State Championship, and extends its sincere congratulations to the players, coaches, families, and supporters for the historic accomplishment adopted this 25th day, August 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none opposed, it passes unanimously. If you would, please stand. Congratulations, gentlemen. If you would be seated, and Coach, just stand for a minute and accept your recognition. We appreciate it. Congratulations, gentlemen. All right, and the next item that we'll be looking at is the Seminole High School Girls Water Polo Team, and this will be read by myself, Commissioner Hoer, who happens to be a Seminole mom. Go Noles! Go Noles! I read the following resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing the 2026 Seminole High School Girls Water Polo Team as state champions. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County recognizes the importance of girls' athletics in fostering leadership, confidence, teamwork, perseverance, and character while celebrating the accomplishments of student athletes who represent their schools and community with pride and distinction. And whereas the Seminole High School Girls Water Polo Team captured the 2026 Florida High School Athletic Association Class 1A State Championship, completing, hold for it, an undefeated 31-0 season and further establishing itself as one of Florida's premier high school water polo programs. And whereas the Seminole High School Girls Water Polo Team secured the state title with an 8-4 victory over West Orange High School on April 25, 2026 at Belen Jesuit Preparatory School in Miami, Florida, earning its second state championship in 3 years, following an undefeated championship season in 2024, while also advancing its fourth consecutive FHSAA State Final Four. And whereas, under the leadership and guidance of head coach Ryan Akerson, who was named the 2026 FHSAA State Coach of the Year, the Seminole High School Girls Water Polo Program has built a championship culture centered on excellence, accountability, perseverance, and the continued development of student athletics, both in competition and in the classroom. And whereas Vivian Swain, who was named the 2026 FHSAA State Player of the Year, exemplified the outstanding talent, leadership, and dedication that have become hallmarks of the Seminole High School Girls Water Polo Program. And whereas the Seminole High School girls water polo team's historic accomplishments have brought tremendous pride to Seminole High School and Seminole County, inspiring future generations of student athletes while reinforcing the values of hard work, resilience, teamwork, and commitment to excellence. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, that the board hereby recognizes and commends the Seminole High School girls water polo team for winning the 2026 FHSAA Class 1A State Championship and extends its sincere appreciation and congratulations to the student athletes, coaches, families, administrators, and supporters whose dedication and hard work contributed to this outstanding achievement. Adopted this 25th day of August 2026.
Second.
Motion and many seconds. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Please stand. Congratulations, lady, and coach, if you would stay standing just for a minute. I did this a little bit differently than the others. I'll round up with this. I will tell you that one of the things that we look for in the business environment when we are recruiting people to come into organizations is athletics in their past. One of the ones I personally look for is anything related to being in a pool. Because it requires you to get up at the crack of dawn, probably be there late at night. They're all nodding and laughing. It requires your parents to have done the same, and it requires a perseverance that's unlike a lot of other sports. And that's not to say that we don't also look for band members, so just remember that you'll be competing with them for jobs as well. I would say this, if you would, audience, please join me in a standing ovation for our student athletes in Seminole County. All right. Did I forget one?
We got one more team.
Oh, my goodness.
We have too many teams
We
winning
have
state
too many teams, we have
championships.
teams.
Saved
Yes.
the best for last, right?
Save the best
Go
for
Bears.
last. So I will hand it to the coach who's saying, hey, well, hold up. All right, and we have the Winter Springs High School softball team to be read by Commissioner Zimbauer, who shall never be forgotten.
Well, we tend to leave the last, the best for last. To echo my fellow commissioners, you know, this is just another sign of what makes Seminole County such a great place to live, work, and play. We've now worked our way completely through the county, recognizing our youth sports around this in Seminole County. It's not the first time. You know, we've had teams from Altamont Springs in here, Winter Springs before, many other places in the community, Lake Mary a couple times.
Avita.
But it just goes to show the commitment that our leaders have taken, our coaches that give their time to help support these children, and of course the families that make the ultimate sacrifice for these children to be able to do what they can do. Builds character, and they are the future leaders of our community, so my hat's off to them. With great pleasure, I have this resolution of Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognize the 2026 Winter Springs High School softball team as state champions. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County recognizes the impact of girls' athletics in building confidence, leadership, teamwork, and character while honoring the dedication and achievements of student athletes who bring recognition to pride to their schools and community. And whereas the Winter Springs High School Bears softball team captured the Florida High School Athletic Association Class 5A State Championship in 2026, earning back-to-back state championships and continuing a tradition of excellence within one of Seminole County's premier softball programs. And whereas the Bears completed their championship season with a dominant 6-0 victory over Niceville High School at Boom Boss Soldiers Creek Park in Longwood, Florida, showcasing outstanding pitching, defense, teamwork, and determination throughout the state tournament. And whereas the Winter Springs High School softball program's continued success reflects the dedication, preparation, and commitment of its student athletes, coaches, families, and school community who have worked together to achieve excellence at the highest level of competition. And whereas, under the leadership and guidance of head coach Farrah Gordon, the Winter Springs softball program has developed a championship culture centered on accountability, perseverance, sportsmanship, and the growth of student athletes both on and off the field. Whereas Athletic Director Scott Gomrad provided leadership and support that have helped foster a culture of achievement and success within Winter Springs High School athletics. And whereas the Winter Springs High School Bears softball team's historic accomplishment has brought tremendous pride to Winter Springs High School and Seminole County, serving as an inspiration to future generations of athletes, exemplifying the values of dedication, teamwork, and determination. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, that the board hereby recognizes and commends the Winter Springs High School Bears softball team for winning the 2026 FHSAA Class 5A Softball State Championship and extends a sincere congratulations to the student athletes, coaches, families, administration, and supporters whose dedication and hard work contributed to this outstanding achievement, adopted this 25th day, August 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a lot of seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, it passes unanimously. If you would please stand and be recognized. Congratulations, congratulations, and coaches, just give us a minute to be recognized on your behalf.
And I must say, the principal regrets she could not be present today. She intended to be here. Or
He, yeah.
He.
sorry.
May I add something to the team's accolades? Over the course of 7 playoff games, they set a national record, scoring 73 runs and giving up 0 for the entire playoff run. These young ladies and coaches want to congratulate them. Thank you again.
All right. That is remarkable. All right, Commissioners, if you would join me on the floor for pictures, unless there's anybody else that's here that's athletic. hush came over the room. And I'll just say, this has nothing to do with the next presenter, but the meeting's going downhill from there. Just so you know. And with that, we'll bring up Mr. McIntyre to talk about economics. This is the County Investment Advisory Report.
I feel the same way. I watch all this. 83 runs and no runs scored against are just remarkable.
Crazy.
So props to all of your athletes. I'm over 60, so I'm always got eyesight challenges here. It helps a little bit. So we're not on the verge of a Fed meeting. We've got 3 weeks before. There is a Jackson Hole Fed symposium on Friday, and I think the market's going to react to that because we're wondering about Fed credibility at this point, because inflation is still high, and the Fed has decided that they're going to target inflation, but they haven't done anything yet. So we're listening to the words. And in the meantime, oil and gas prices are creeping higher. You know why that is. The market is not real thrilled with that. There is some signs emerging of labor market weakness. The labor market's kind of been all over the place. My personal opinion is that the labor market is not strong, and I think a lot of that is changes that are happening involving technology. We believe the Fed is going to be on hold at least until December. My expectation is that the Fed is not going to raise rates. The market expects the Fed will raise rates. I think that, and I've said it before, the new Fed chair was hired with the predisposition to cut rates. So the idea of hurting the economy deliberately by raising rates, which is what the Fed does. They tried to, in essence, cripple demand. So in doing so, they lower prices. It's not just a question of raising rates and suddenly inflation moves lower. Demand has to move lower too. Then, of course, if you guys have been following the newspapers, we just hit $40 trillion very quickly in terms of the national debt. And what that means is that debt service costs right now are above $1 trillion a year. They're expected to be above $2 trillion by 2036, so within 10 years. And I think that theme is going to continue to show up in the newspapers. I think that the media is aware of it, and the market's aware of it too. So long-term rates are higher than they've been in a long time. The 30-year is as high as it's been in 3 decades. Again, bad news. Let's talk about softball, volleyball, water volleyball, all good. Economy, not so much. This is just a quick look at GDP. That red line is quarter over quarter annualized. That's what shows up. The thing really to point out is that last quarter, second quarter, 1.5% economic growth. A lot of that had to do with a negative drag from trade and a negative drag from inventories, both of which I think are going to be actually go the other way in the third quarter. I think third quarter growth is going to appear fairly strong for what that's worth. This is, as I was talking about before, these are non-farm payrolls. Last 3 months, you can actually see the downward trend pretty significantly, and the month of July was a negative payroll growth month. This is CPI. This is the Consumer Price Index. This is headline inflation. You can see that it actually has moved lower over the past 2 months. A lot of that has to do with lower gas prices, lower energy prices in general. We know that that's actually reversed itself in August. We can see it at the gas pump. So that was just sort of a head fake. The Fed knows it. This is the 2-year Treasury note yield going back 1 year. That line at the bottom is the day that the war started, so you can see the impact of energy prices on bond yields. This is the latest Bloomberg survey. I know it's a little bit difficult to see. I'll point out some of the highlights. These are 85 economists that get to weigh in every month. They're U.S. economists. They're some of the best and the brightest. Although the market expects the Fed is going to raise rates, the economists do not. They expect the Fed is going to be on hold. You can see that with the currently the overnight rate target by the Fed is 350 to 375. So this is the upper band staying at 375 until next year. And then these economists believe the next move will be a rate cut. I do as well. I believe the economy is not as strong as would otherwise indicate. These, you know the drill here. The top tier there are the overnight liquidity options, and right now the lion's share of the Seminole County's monies is in Florida Prime. That is managed by Federated, and AAA M rated, good place to be. U.S. Treasury yields have actually come down a little bit since the last time we were here, so you were able to buy your purchases at some of the higher yields. I don't know if that's, I can't say that's anything other than fortunate. But looking at the recent transactions, there was a one-year term done at 4.30. There were 2 FHLB callable trades done at 4.40 and 4.60. I expect, even though those go out to 2-year and 3-year, I expect they'll be called early. But as we've discussed, I believe that putting on a 4.40 and a 4.60 relative to 3.75 even for 6 months is going to make sense. So every little nickel we can pick up on the tracks contributes to income. One of the overlying themes when we're investing is that there's a significant amount of income that comes into your coffers. During the Great Recession, rates were at 0. For 2 years during the pandemic, rates were at 0. Now rates are generally between 3.5% and 4.5%, depending on where you're investing. And that generates a lot of interest income. And what we're trying to do here is safely hold on to as much of that as we can for as long as we can. Upcoming maturities, I've spoken to the clerk's office. That maturity that comes on Monday is needed. So we're going to go ahead and let that fall into Florida Prime. There will be some $35 million actually matures at the end of September. The needs for that are significantly less. I think we're going to have the opportunity to invest that when we talk at the next meeting. So in essence, what I'm telling you is that we need the liquidity. We invested last time. Those rates were good. They've added to the overall yield. Portfolio yield has generally been moving higher, so we went from a 3.95 to a 3.96. With these moves, it'll settle in August, 3.97. Most of that gets weighed down by what's fully liquid, which is well below 4%, but we need that liquidity. So, and there's the benchmark. Seminole County has been doing well, especially given the fact that it's a safe portfolio. But I'm going to come back up here. I'm going to ask for your motion.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
I'll move to implement the recommendations of our financial advisor based on the report he submitted to us today, and I recommend the clerk implement said board recommendations.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you, Scott, for being here.
Thank you all.
We are going to take a break for, it is 10:15. We'll be back at 10:30. I think we have some setup to do with regard to the second portion of the meeting. So we'll see you back at 10:30.
Okay.
A bit early, so if you would take your seats, that would be fabulous. All right, I'll call the meeting back to order. Thank you all for being patient with us while we got set up. We're ready to move on to the consent agenda. I'll look for additions, deletions, or modifications. County Manager?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Just one addition to the agenda that was sent to your offices and published on Friday is 19A. It's a mitigation grant, mitigation credits that we have to buy for Rosenwald. So that's the only addition. So staff recommends approval of the County Manager's consent agenda.
Commissioners?
I have nothing.
I would actually like to pull item 20 for discussion. And that's the only item. So with that, I'll look for public comment. So I'll go to County Attorney to read the rules of public comment.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Florida law provides that members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard on propositions before the Board of County Commissioners, except when the board is acting on emergency or ministerial matters or conducting a meeting exempt from the requirements of the Sunshine Law. Individuals shall be permitted 3 minutes each for public comment or 6 minutes when the individual is an official representative of a formal association or group. The chairman may modify the maximum time for public comment at her sole discretion when appropriate. Public comments on quasi-judicial or other public hearing items will occur during the board's consideration of those items this afternoon. Public comments on pending procurement matters or on non-agenda items shall not be permitted at this time. Members of the public desiring to make public comment must fill out a speaker form and present the form to staff. Forms are available in the lobby. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And I have 4 forms that are being passed down the dais. All are in support of item 8 and 9. All right, Dominique, if you would call the first speaker.
First speaker is Charlene Santos on item 6.
Ms. Santos, you'll have 3 minutes. Name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Charlene, C-H-A-R-L-I-N-E. Last name Santos, S-A-N-T-O-S. I live at 713 Holbrook Circle, Lake Mary, Florida. I'm here to speak on agenda item number 6, the request to authorize the Sheriff's Office to submit an application to the U.S. Department of Justice for the fiscal year 2026 Bridging Immigration-Related Deficits Experienced Nationwide Program, Round 2, and this is to authorize the Sheriff to execute future documents related to that grant. While I am fully support of the Sheriff's Office, and I support bringing federal dollars back to Seminole County when those dollars benefit our residents, I also believe that it's important that we fully understand the conditions attached to those dollars. The document attached to today's agenda do not provide the details of the application, of the grant application. What we have been given is essentially a certification document. And before this is approved, residents deserve some basic answers. First, how much money is Seminole County applying for, and what will the grant pay for? This federal program supports several activities, personnel, operations, equipment and technology, as well as facilities, including the construction, expansion, and modernization of temporary detention facilities. Secondly, what additional responsibilities or commitments will our Sheriff's Office take on by accepting the grant? How could those responsibilities affect our neighborhoods, our communities, and the trust residents have in local law enforcement? And finally, could accepting the grant create future costs for Seminole County taxpayers once the federal funds ends, especially at a time when residents are feeling squeezed? These are reasonable questions. I'm not suggesting that we turn down the federal funding. I am asking that we understand the full agreement before we authorize it. Transparency starts by laying out the basics and also the details. Before we sign, residents deserve to know exactly what we're signing up for. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next is Emery Green Jr. on item 9.
Mr. Green, name and address for the record, please, and thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman, County Manager. I'm here to speak in support of visionary planning, strong advocacy, and most importantly, action. There's a simple phrase I believe applies to the proposed indoor events complex along Lake Mary Boulevard. Advocacy without action is just a dream. Dreaming is necessary because we must believe in what our community can become. But dreams only create impact when leaders are willing to turn vision into action. We have the perfect example right here in Sanford. The Sanford Riverwalk was not an overnight success. Its vision was first laid out in the 1980s by then Mayor Betty Smith. Decades later, after planning, advocacy partnerships, and strategic investment, that vision became a 5-mile reality. The completed Riverwalk represented approximately $43 million in investment. And what did that investment create? It became a destination that strengthened connections and expanded recreational opportunities. The Sanford Riverwalk is a lasting asset that reflects the county's motto, Florida's natural choice. Today, Seminole County has another opportunity to think beyond tomorrow and plan for the next generation. The proposed indoor events complex is more than a building. It's an economic development strategy designed to deliver lasting benefits. As recently reported by the Orlando Sentinel, county tourism officials and hosts that are concerned that visitor growth has become stagnant in the recent years. The proposed complex could help revise and reverse that trend, and it will enable Seminole County to attract more tournaments and experiential events, including sports, arts, entertainment, and more. Those visitors stay in hotels, dine in restaurants, shop in local stores, experience our community supporting jobs generating tourism-related revenue in Seminole County and throughout Central Florida. As you know, the Boomba Sports Complex has been ranked #1 amongst America's best youth sports complexes. That tells us something important. We already have a built reputation. So now we need the indoor infrastructure to expand the opportunity beyond baseball and beyond limitations of Florida's weather. So I encourage you to think about Seminole County and the needs 20, 30, and beyond. It's important to let us ask, what will our community gain tomorrow if we have the courage to act today? Let's support the proposed indoor sports complex, invest in our future, strengthen sports tourism, create economic opportunity, and demonstrate once again that in Seminole County, visionary planning is followed by advocacy, and advocacy is followed by action. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Emery.
Mr. Green.
Thank you.
We have one more speaker.
Yes, ma'am. Elliot Griffin on item 14.
Mr. Griffin, name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Elliot Griffin. I live at 148 Cherry Creek Circle in Winter Springs. Good morning, Commissioners and staff. I'm speaking in strong support of Agenda Item 14. It's the FDP Resilient Florida Grant Proposal. My family and I live on the Cross Seminole Trail. It's great. We use it every day. We've also seen how it can really flood during hurricanes. And securing this grant is a crucial step towards fixing chronic flood zones in Seminole County, including where I live in Winter Springs. I'd like to thank the County Public Works for the recent clearing out of culverts and swales along the trail. With this maintenance done, we can now see that the aging stormwater infrastructure is inadequate. The evidence is unmistakable. There's washed out berms, flooded private property, eroded trail, and the trail is really a gem. So there's multiple reasons to address this. We've also observed culverts beneath the 417, which are buried under feet of sediment from erosion. And with the 417 widening project underway, this can only worsen in the future. Any ponds that are built to code will overflow and hurricane loads, sending water into that inadequate and aged infrastructure and towards private property. To solve this, we need true interagency coordination. I urge the board to bring hydraulic and water resource engineers together from all jurisdictions and third-party firms. Several large culverts are missing from the 2025 Ardura model setup and should be discussed along with flooding observations. I believe that when engineers sit in a room with accurate data, real solutions will come forth, including evaluating how paving over parcels like Jetta Point Park will worsen downhill flooding. Any potential development on that parcel faces serious site constraints. Massive runoff from the 417, small and limited access through an assisted living facility and a county trailhead, an active bald eagle's nest, and a very small frontage, which is also a 417 on-ramp. Alternatively, a passive park that's built using existing facilities of the Cross Seminole Trail could absorb stormwater and recharge our aquifer in a sustainable manner. With regard to tax revenue, please consider that parks increase home value while flooding decreases home value. So please approve this grant application today. Prioritize comprehensive modeling in the Howell Creek Basin study and lead the regional effort to fix our stormwater infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you very much. Does that complete our public speakers? Thank you. Commissioners, any comments? All right, I'll look for a motion for the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll move the agreement of the Constitutional Officers Consent Agenda 5 and 6, and the County Manager's Consent Agenda 7 through 21, including 19A, but not including 20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? Thank you. All right, I pulled item 20 for your consideration. I have worked with the Department of Economic Development and Evoke Advertising. I believe that that contract should have a cap on the monetization, so there's a share of revenue, and I would propose that the cap be placed at $100,000, and I hope that every bit of it gets earned, because that means we take in $900,000. And I would welcome a rediscussion at the point that we hit that limit, so that we consider what we do in the future. This is the beginning stage of a contract like this, and it's just wise for us to put something in it to force the following discussion. Commissioner Delarue?
Madam Chair, I think your recommendations are spot on. I compliment you for making them. I'd like to make a motion to approve with your comments to adjust into the contracting agreement as presented with your comments.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. And thank you to Evoke Advertising.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, as we're getting ready for 22 and the work session, I just wanted to point out 21 was concerning the UCF Research Business Incubator Partnership Agreement. It has just been, since we're talking about accolades today, it has just been named the #1 business incubator in the state by Time Magazine.
Wow. Yeah.
I would also, so everybody's aware, the City of Winter Springs no longer funds that incubator, makes no contributions as of 1 year ago.
And it's moving to Seminole State in Heathrow.
Correct. So it's another asset we're losing from my district, unfortunately.
But they're staying in the county.
Understood.
Staying in the county.
Understood.
In a more centralized location.
All right, so I'm going to pull this meeting back together. We have a work session on item number 22, Amendment 3 Budget Impacts, and I see Mr. Jex standing at the ready.
And Madam Chairman and Commissioners, I'll actually start off, if you will. Just a few opening comments. So good morning, Chairman and Commissioners, and to everyone watching us. As you may recall, we met with the board on July 14th to discuss Amendment 3 and the potential financial impacts to Seminole County government. At that meeting, the Office of Management and Budget presented our initial estimates and outlined the steps we are taking to prepare this organization should voters approve the amendment in November. Today, we move from talking about the dollars to talking about services. Before we do that, I want to put the numbers you are about to hear into perspective. Seminole County's total budget is approximately $1.3 billion. At first glance, a potential $119 million reduction may appear to be relatively a small percentage of that total. But county revenues are not interchangeable. And we have mentioned this at prior meetings, and I think, Chairman, you had mentioned the old ice cube tray and that we cannot move from fund to fund. Much of our budget consists of revenues that are legally restricted for specific purposes. Give an example, like tourist development tax dollars cannot simply be redirected to repair a road or pay a firefighter. Water and sewer revenues cannot be used to operate a library. The three funds supported by property taxes have approximately $562 million in total revenues. Under the full implementation of Amendment 3, we estimate those funds would lose the approximately $119 million in reoccurring revenue. That is the challenge we are preparing for. Earlier this month, I brought our leadership team together and asked each department to work through a very difficult exercise. If your available funding were permanently reduced by approximately 20%, what would that mean for the services that we provide to our residents and business owners? Today, you will hear the results of that work from our Parks and Recreation Department, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Community Services. At our next meeting on September the 15th, we will continue this discussion with our public safety agencies. I want to emphasize that you will hear today our staff recommendations and planning scenarios. No decisions have been made. If Amendment 3 is approved by voters, we will come back to this board to continue these discussions. Ultimately, decisions about reducing or eliminating county services will be a policy decision made by this board through the budget process and interactions with our citizens. There is one other point I want to make before we begin. Seminole County government is largely a service organization. We don't manufacture a product. We don't make anything. What we do is provide services, and these services are provided through and delivered by people. They are the employees who maintain our roads and our stormwater systems. They are librarians, park employees, animal service officers, firefighters, paramedics, and hundreds of other public servants who come to work every day to serve this community. That means a permanent revenue reduction of this magnitude will affect our workforce. There is simply no way around it. And the impact would extend beyond our county employees. As you will hear today, some potential reductions involve services we provide through private vendors, through the private sector, whether that is mowing county right-of-ways, maintaining facilities, providing specialized services, or purchasing materials for our operations. When we reduce those expenditures, the impact does not stop at the county's doors. Those dollars support jobs and businesses throughout Seminole County and Central Florida. So as we go through these presentations, I would encourage us to look beyond the individual budget numbers. And the question we are wanting to answer is much simpler. If Amendment 3 passes, what will be different for the people who live, work, and do business in Seminole County? That is what today's presentations are designed to show. With that, I will now turn it over to our Budget Director, Tim Jex, who will walk us through the county revenues, and then we will begin with our Parks and Recreation Department. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Jets.
Thank you, Mr. County Manager and Chairman. So what's on the ballot in November is a constitutional amendment, number 3, that would provide a bigger homestead exemption from the current $50,000 up to $150,000 in 2027 and $250,000 in 2028. There will also be a cap on non-homestead properties, which would drop from 10% to 5%. When this first was brought up, there was the idea that public safety budgets would be held harmless, but they will be affected. That was not in the final bill. There was also discussion of a trust fund to offset lost revenues. That is not included. And finally, there's an idea that the lost revenue is a small percentage of the county's budget, which is a bit of a misunderstanding. So we estimate that the total impact of Amendment 3 will be $119 million in lost revenues. Seminole County has a $1.3 billion budget, so that would be about 9% of the total budget. However, within the county's budget, we have $562 million in property tax funded revenues. Then we have $593 million in revenues that are legally restricted, $32 million in interfund transfers, and $108 million in fund balances, which are not true revenue inflows. County revenues are allocated into 101 different funding buckets that are used to maintain legal compliance and accountability. Property tax funds are shown on the left in green, totaling $562 million. On the right, you see restricted revenues totaling $593 million, which cannot be used on property tax funded activities. Water and sewer bills must be used to maintain the county's water and sewer system. Under solid waste, landfill fees must be used to pay for operations of the landfill and central transfer station. The infrastructure penny tax can only be used for capital infrastructure. It cannot be used to pay for sheriff deputies or firefighter salaries. Tourism funds make up a small percentage of the county's budget, and they are restricted by state statute to promote tourist activities. MSBUs are self-assessments by taxpayers for a specific purpose, like lake management. E911 funds are fees paid on your cell phone bill, which can only be used to maintain the 911 system. Health insurance revenues must be used to pay for medical claim activities. Internal service funds are for property liability and workers' comp insurance. And special revenues include grant agreements, which must be spent based on contractual requirements. The impact of Amendment 3 and the $119 million in lost revenues will come from the $562 million in property tax budgets in green. This chart shows the impact of Amendment 3 by our 3 property tax funds. You see in bold the total revenue inflows of $562 million. In the general fund, the $85 million loss of revenue is about 20% of the total budget. In the fire fund, the $33 million loss of revenue is 24%. That's higher because the fire fund relies more heavily on property taxes. And then the total $119 million loss of revenues is approximately 21% of the total budget impact. This chart shows where your property tax dollars are currently allocated. 41 cents of every dollar goes towards law enforcement, corrections, and the jail. 31 cents goes to fire, EMS, dispatch, and emergency management. 11% goes to transportation, roads, bridges, traffic, drainage, and mass transit. 5% goes to recreation for parks, libraries, trails, and natural lands. 3 cents of every dollar goes to BCC programs, including county administration, planning, facilities, and information technology. 3 cents goes to our constitutional officers, the property appraiser, clerk of court, and supervisor of elections. 1 cent goes to human services, and 5 cents goes to unfunded mandates. The outer wheel of this chart shows the budgets for your property tax funded services. Public safety starts on the left. Sheriff law enforcement is $119 million. Jail is $74 million. Court security is $11 million. Moving up, we have fire personnel for $92 million. Fire operations is $21 million. Fire capital is $29 million. Then we have dispatch, emergency management, and animal services for $5 million each. In the center, you see the $562 million in revenues, and in red, you see the impact of Amendment 3. If unfunded mandates and public safety budgets do not share in the reductions, the lost revenues will be greater than the total budget for community services, general government services, constitutional officers, parks, transportation, and 1/3 of the public works operating budget. Unfunded mandates are proclamations from the state of law requiring local governments to expend funds based on Florida statutes. Since the 1980s, there have been over 300 mandates which have shifted costs from the state to the county. When you include our jail, property taxes pay for $110 million of these unfunded mandates. This slide summarizes the challenge we're facing. Of the $562 million in property tax revenues, 72% is allocated to public safety, 5% to unfunded mandates. The impact of Amendment 3 would be 21%. That totals 98% of current revenues, leaving 2% for all other services. Amendment 3 goes to the voters on November 3rd. If it passes, Phase 1 would be immediate service changes happening prior to the revenue impacts. Phase 2 start fiscal year 28, that's next October. We'll have the $70 million impact of the $150,000 exemption, and then finally Phase 3 for fiscal 29, we'll have the full $250,000 exemption implemented, which will have a $119 million impact. That concludes my part of the presentation.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any comments?
I do.
Commissioner Zimbower?
Tim, I just want to make sure if we go to slide, I guess it's 13 or maybe it's 12, the one we're just there with the pie chart. I want to make sure I'm tracking this properly. I look at the sheriff law enforcement portion of this at $119 million. That's all in, is that correct?
That's the certified transfer budget that the sheriff has requested.
Right, that's his personnel, all his other expenses, all in the sheriff's ask, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In comparison, if I look at the fire personnel alone is $92 million. Then I bring in the fire operations at $21 million. Then I bring in the capital on fire at $29 million. That would pretty much take care of all of our fire, those three categories, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we could agree that is much higher than what the sheriff's budget transfer is, correct?
Excluding the jail, the sheriff law
Well,
enforcement.
the jail's our responsibility.
Yes,
We pay him to do that. Otherwise, we would have to do that,
yes.
correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm just looking at the things we're responsible for in these categories you've broken out. My point is, it would appear that our fire service costs are much higher than our law enforcement costs. Is that a fair?
They are higher, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you very much. Just adding to, and they're not numbered, so I'm going to say to the 500, where it says 562 million property tax revenue, and then you put 72% public safety, 5% unfunded mandates, 21% taken off from Amendment 3. The one that you didn't include, and that one is the 3%, or the 3 cents, the constitutional officers, which we really have no control over either. So when you take that off, we're actually, it leaves minus 1% for all other services. So that means no matter what happens, all other services potentially could go, and we'd have to cut 1% from everybody else. Correct. Thank you.
Probably a nice add to the slides at some point. That's probably a nice add to the slides at some point.
I think it would be.
Because that is relevant. If you go back to the pie chart, I do have a comment on that. I do think it's important to point out to our team that while we're representing this as the red is all of those areas only, clearly that's not the intention. That is just the mathematical representation to make sure that we are educating the public around the notion that this isn't a simple lift. And that certainly does the job. But I just want to put that out there on the record, that this will be spread out throughout the entire operation to include all areas. There's no other way to do it if it happens. All right, we ready to move on, Commissioners?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. With that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Durr for Parks and Recreation.
Mr. Durr?
I'm waiting for my setup, man.
I thought you might be waiting for me, so I thought I'd weigh in there.
So I'm going to cover the budgets for each of the departments. The property tax funded budget for our Parks and Recreation Services total $30.3 million. This includes 177 full-time positions. The 20% reduction would equate to about $6.1 million. And the $30 million makes up approximately 5% of our property tax revenues.
Thank you, Mr. Jex. So in order to keep with the theme of trying to put all of these into simple buckets, we've tried to sprinkle that throughout this presentation. So one thing to think about within the Parks and Recreation umbrella, we've got 4 main services. The extension services, our library services, which are countywide, our recreation division, and our trails and parks, which make up the rest of our outdoor open space and the operations and maintenance of those areas, as well as a small administration office to help support those within the county. Now, specifically by the numbers, we have staff based at 17 different locations throughout the county. We manage over 7,700 acres of county-owned parks and natural lands. We have 6 regional parks staffed 7 days a week. They're open for more than 80 hours during the week. 5 library branches staffed at 7 days a week, which are open for 56 hours a week. 26 unstaffed parks and trailheads, 1 golf course in operation, the museum, 11 natural lands open for public use, our UF-IFAS Extension Services operation, the Ed Nibogene Yarborough Nature Center, and then we maintain 51 miles of paved trails, 85 miles of unpaved and wilderness trails, 60 different county facilities regarding the grounds maintenance, and 50 miles of county roadway medians maintained. Now, those are all maintained by people, and people with different backgrounds, about as varied as their different roles and responsibilities within the county. So from our frontline service, customer service folks that are staffing at our libraries and our parks, the maintenance folks that are out and doing everything from picking sunflower seeds out of our artificial turf every week, to mowing the grass, to folks with advanced degrees who are delivering services from everything from educational opportunities within the county to health opportunities within the county, all the way down to special licenses and certifications to make sure that we're doing and maintaining our best practices across the board. Now, some of those numbers last year alone include from our Extension Services offices, working with over 7,200 children through our 4-H program. Our library services, which hosted over 1.3 million in-person visits to our library branches, and over 3.5 million visitors to our primary parks, our trails, and so forth. That includes also 355 acres of habitat restored here in Seminole County to help preserve Florida's natural choice. Again, a wide variety of services offered within this umbrella. We're also very privileged to be part of the county's economic impact strategy through our youth sports tournaments. These numbers that were generated in the last year, the 92 events that are listed all took place at county facilities, generating over $55 million worth of economic impact to our business community. As we continue to work with our tourism partners, those numbers are trending higher for 2026. So that's some of the good news, and if you wanted to hear more information about the positive impacts of our community, we've got the 2025 Community Impact Report, which is available on the county's website, that goes into great detail about our involvement and our staff's involvement with our business partners and the volunteers and the scores of other nonprofits and other groups that we work with within the community to make this all possible. Now, with the question of how do we then approach a reduction of a potentially up to 20% or above in reduction of services. So heading forward, if asking this question, we would look at certain things such as we would need to suspend exactly where we're at. Our recommendation, would be to suspend our current program of the Seminole Forever Natural Lands Program based on where we're currently at within that project. We would also reevaluate current park projects that, regardless of funding, could have a positive or a negative impact on the overall general fund of the county. So that includes everything from staffing needs to maintenance needs as new projects come online. Other services that are out there that are a portion of and funded through the general fund include the operation of the law library, museum. We would have to reestablish and reevaluate how we contract our maintenance. Those aren't just switches that you can flip on and off. By the end of next fiscal year, we will have to have new contracts in place because, as you'll see, we rely a lot on the local business community to help with our maintenance needs. So those things would need to be evaluated, and reduction of services and levels of service put forth in proposals to the Board of County Commissioners. We would need to look at how we address our programs across all divisions. This includes programs that are serving both the public private and homeschooled students. We have that both with our libraries and with our natural lands program, where we have scores of students both after school that use our libraries for those services, folks that are in homeschools that use us as resources, as well as the scores of field trips that participate in our natural lands program at the Nature Center as part of their school curriculums. Again, we wouldn't want to just flip a switch at the new fiscal year. We would need to evaluate exactly how we would address those reductions in levels of service. And last but not least, we would need to freeze vacant positions under further evaluation. And that is because as we start to look at each of the 4 divisions within our department, we really rely on staff as our primary expenditure going forward. So as I look at extension services, of that yearly budget, almost 70% of that goes towards our staffing of those programs. Smaller percentages are included, and I'll show you those on the screen. I won't go through every single one of them, but in this case, as an example, about 12% of their budget goes towards goods and services that need to be bought in order to facilitate the delivery of those services. So these are things that we're buying out in the community and so forth. And then about 18% of those, the nebulous internal charges of keeping the lights on, equipment, everything that goes into essentially operating and delivering those services throughout the community. So what could be, by addressing the largest expenditure within our extension services budget, what could be reductions of service, and what are those that we would need to evaluate? Well, that includes our consumer and family sciences, and that health and wellness education and school programs. It goes both towards our school students as well as adults within the community. Our youth services, such as our 4-H program, our FFA and financial literacy programs that we're involved with working with school children. Our horticulture and sustainable agriculture programs. We assist in the farm tour on an annual basis, as well as providing assistance to homeowners as they continue to look at what is possible for them through our chickens program and so forth, and helping to educate what's available to them, as well as our involvement with the Florida Friendly Yards education program that's a part of both our water quality protection program, as well as the continued education involved through our fertilizer ordinance. So you see, there's a lot of different services that are offered within an umbrella of the Extension Services Division that would need to be evaluated. Next is our libraries. Our libraries is the largest single division within Parks and Recreation. As you can see by this particular chart, it makes up almost 2/3 of our budget, are the people who maintain those libraries, maintain our collection, and provide services to our public. Only about 10% are the things that we buy on an annual basis of materials that go into our library programs. The kinds of programs and the kinds of services that are offered at our libraries that would be affected obviously with fewer staff. We've got less availability of the building as well as the programs in which they offer. So we would need to evaluate what reducing operating hours would look like. When I talk about being open 7 days a week and 56 hours, that means we're open for more than 8 hours a day, which simply means during the week, we're staffing the libraries in 2 shifts. If that's our primary resource, then we'd have to address how we would downshift, if you will, and including looking at different days of operation and maybe targeting those that are maybe the less frequented. In terms of what that impact would be to the community is you just have availability of less and fewer library resources. So we have public computers that folks rely on, including our public Wi-Fi and the printing. Our staff is every day helping people apply for jobs and apply for training online. Our meeting and educational spaces would be obviously less available, as well as just less available of physical materials throughout the community. Lastly, our librarians also put on youth and adult literacy programs. As I said, the job application assistance and other educational and community programs, both with partners, other education within our community, as well as single offerings that we have within our libraries. Again, that would be the potential impact that we would be looking at by reducing our primary resource. This is where we start to get into parks, our recreation division. This is our 6 regional facilities that we talked about, where our youth economic impact events are held. So we're talking about the Boomba Sports Complex, Boomba Soldiers Creek Park, Lake Sylvan Park, Red Bug Lake Park, Softball Complex, and San Lando. This is where you see about 55% of those resources are dedicated to our staff. With this particular division, we start to introduce some of our contract staff. So the operating services line of about almost 9%, those are contract staff members. Those are the folks that put on our tennis programs, our tennis coaches, our umpires, those that are participating in our programs. Those are contract staff. So now we're talking about almost 63% of our budget going towards people in our community to facilitate those programs. This is where we also introduce the impact potentially to our business community. The operating repair and maintenance line of about 7.5%. That is where we have contracts with local businesses. While our staff is busy keeping the playing courts in shape and safe, as well as mowing the grass on our sports fields, we have other contractors coming in and taking care of the common areas and some of the other more utilitarian aspects to just managing the property. So at this point, we're looking at, regarding both our staff, our outsourced staff, and our outsourced maintenance, over 70% of our budget is devoted to. So again, 2 of our facilities are open for 81 hours a week. Excuse me, 4 of our facilities are open for 81 hours a week. The other 2, specifically the Boomba Sports Complex, including that, is open 94 hours a week in order to facilitate both local play as well as the operation of weekend tournaments and summer tournaments. Downshifting in available staffing. Obviously, as you can tell, there are multiple overlapping shifts in terms of maintenance and keeping this facility operational. So having to evaluate how we shift down or downshift the availability of these facilities. That includes the program delivery that's done at each of these facilities as well. We have not just tourism events, but we have recreational programs that are run at each of those facilities. So again, evaluating how those levels of service would be reduced, as well as a big cost to us is the maintenance of those facilities. We have certain levels of service that we currently apply for, both regarding our in-house staff and maintenance, as well as those that we contract with out in the business community. All of those would need to be reevaluated to look for cost savings across the board. The last division is our Parks and Trails division. This is where all of our unstaffed parks, our natural lands, and our trails are maintained. This equation is a little bit different. The majority of our operating budget goes straight to our business community. These are local business partners that provide maintenance services across the board. So almost 50%, 56% of this budget is to our local businesses that help us maintain these assets within the community. 28% of that goes to our personal services. So again, both to people that are employed by local businesses as well as to our staff. That is the majority of our operations in order to continue to deliver these services. So again, highlighting the overall services delivered through the Parks and Trails division, we would need to evaluate across the board just how we operate and maintain all of our unstaffed parks. We would have to look at reduced maintenance across neighborhood parks and trailheads, our natural lands and nature center, our passive parks, our trails, our roadway medians, and county property. And last but certainly not least, we have our natural lands program that is nestled within this program that has our eco camps. They operate the Nature Center, as well as offer other educational programs, such as guided hikes and nature lessons throughout their program throughout the year. So looking ahead, I should probably say, not looking forward, but looking ahead, what could be the ongoing service impacts as we look at potential future reductions as well? Again, the realization we're having to come back with is the Seminole Forever Natural Lands Program, which is funded entirely out of the general fund. Is that a viable program if the funding is not sustainable? We would be evaluating and reevaluating our delivery of our youth and community educational programs at the library. Our capital projects would primarily be based on need of existing facilities, and having gone through the Great Recession in the unfortunate position we found ourselves in of running facilities to failure. We would be staring that in the face, and it would be much more of a stark reality going forward. We would be looking at freezing our staffing levels and looking at evaluating at further reductions as needed within the general fund. Obviously, we'd be looking at lowering our service levels of maintenance for our community assets. And last but not least, evaluating the viability of certain lands moving forward based on reduced funding. Now, I absolutely refuse to end any presentation on a down note. So in this case, and I prefer to look at the, and just as my privilege of representing everyone who works in the Parks and Recreation Department as representatives of the county. The benefits of the Parks Department, I think we've been able to establish that we really enjoy being able to serve our public and contributing greatly to the quality of life for our residents, such as the opportunity for healthy lifestyles, low-cost educational opportunities from the very youngest to the very oldest, low-cost transportation with our trail system, and protecting Florida's natural choice through our environmental program. But an integral part, but being it a part, let me try that again. But lastly, we really appreciate the fact that we are part of Seminole County's economic engine of keeping high property values for our residents, of direct spending through employment of our staff and our business partners in our community, but helping to drive a greater economic impact to local businesses and future prosperity of us and our residents within Seminole County. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Delory?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Durr. Can you talk to us about the accreditation and what that really means to us, what that costs, and how many other entities, if in the state or surrounding areas, are accredited? And then I have another follow-up question about that.
Absolutely. So our Parks and Recreation Department is nationally accredited through a board. It is all completely based on best practices within the industry. Those are modified on a period of 5 years, and we were first accredited back in the 2000s, just before the economic downturn, and every 5 years we've been reaccredited since. At that particular time, we were one of only 3 counties to become nationally accredited within the state of Florida. We're currently, based on my last knowledge, about one of 8 counties to be nationally accredited. And we've been accredited longer than all but 2 of the other counties within the state. What that essentially means is that not only do we meet on a management basis and how we maintain our fiscal responsibility, as well as the responsibility we have to the natural environment and providing services, quality services to our public. We have to not just be able to write a wonderful memo, but also be able to prove that we are indeed walking the walk. So every 5 years, we are reevaluated across the board to the very latest and strictest of best practices from across the country.
Thank you, Rick. And again, this is really the first time that we've actually been involved in actually looking at your total presentation. Have you looked at outsourcing anything additional, like, selling property and actually outsourcing large groups of your operation?
So in terms of community assets, we would need to look at that on a much deeper basis, of course. We are blessed to have a number of community assets spread from the most developed areas in the county to the most rural parts of the county. All of those we would evaluate and bring those back for future consideration. Any new assets or new acquisitions, is what I said, obviously all of those would need to be reevaluated as well. In terms of our ability to outsource additional staffing at this point, obviously we would look at that deeper. A number of that had already been done through the economic downturn. The large budget that you saw within one of our divisions alone, part of that was as a result of the economic downturn and our ability to outsource a lot of sort of the regular maintenance, the blow and go, if you will, of cutting grass and making sure that things are in working order. The reality of our staffing levels at this particular time, however, for our county staff is we don't have a lot of redundant staffing. Meaning that at any of our facilities, if we have one person call out sick while somebody else is on vacation, I'll look at more of a dynamic staffing model. We're now pulling staff from other facilities to help cover. We've just been in the mode of doing so. There's nothing wrong with that. It really drives the best value to the county as well. It's just that we're thin to begin with. So outsourcing any of those other things, we'd be looking for opportunities. It's just the realities of there's not a lot of different ways to spend that dollar.
Okay. Thank you. End of my questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Constantine, I think you had your hand up.
Okay. Thank you very much. Discounting, which we cannot, the value to our local businesses that you and all the other programs that we're going to talk to today benefit. So you think we're tightening our belts, look at the, all the businesses. Tim, by your own numbers, this 20% reduction that you're talking about has to assume that everything in general revenue through ad valorem will have to be reduced 20% also, which means public safety and fire department would have to be reduced by 20%, if my numbers are correct or your numbers are correct. So am I correct on that?
That's correct.
So I want to bring out the fact that we're only looking at 20% reduction here, because we're also talking about, if we do this, if Amendment 3 passes, that we're talking about 20% across the board to all ad valorem. So if we don't do that, which means if we don't reduce the sheriff's budget, the fire department's budget, the unfunded mandates budget, and the constitutional officer's budget by 20% also, all these programs are at zero. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct, if everyone doesn't share in the reductions.
So us talking about this.
I would add, I think that is wrong. I think it's a negative number.
Correct.
Yeah, okay,
Still
well,
have
I
to
mean,
go
we're even
a
losing.
third of the budget on public works in order to get to zero.
No, you're right, it's 1%, 19 million, something like that. I agree, but I was just trying to.
Right,
we-
but I don't think
we can't.
we can't work our way out
Yeah,
of
we
this
can't
by
do it.
cutting everybody
Now we're
to
talking
zero.
about 21%, correct?
Correct.
So the fact of the matter is, we're doing an exercise here that really assumes that we can cut public safety and fire. And that needs to be included in the discussion, because I don't think that people understand when we're talking about 20%, that they know that that means that everything gets cut 20%, not just public works, not just, parks and recreation. So in essence, if you think about that, and if we couldn't cut them by 21%, and I'll use 21%, okay? If we couldn't cut them by 21%, and I'm talking about police and fire, then you're gone, just gone. Let's not talk about 20% reduction. Let's talk about you're out of the building, everybody's out of the building, all of you folks are out of the building. I'm just being honest.
And yet, we don't think we're going there.
No, we are not,
Commissioner
because
Zimbauer.
people are smart enough not to.
We're smart enough not to do that. Commissioner Zimbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure I follow Commissioner Constantine. I think it was pretty clear, or at least I thought, this was not as originally floated by the governor, that first responders were out of this picture. It's clear they are on the table to be cut under the current initiative that's going to go on the ballot.
21%.
We're all clear on that? I think maybe that's
Yes.
what Commissioner was trying to say, but it was pretty clear in the early presentation that we've tried to make the public aware of that. So here's what a couple questions. In the parks, since we're on the parks, recreation, are there any bond issues or contractual agreements of property that we've either been given or purchased that require us to do certain things that cannot be omitted? In other words, are there any capital improvements or O&M that we are contractually bound to do, either through a bond initiative on any natural lands or otherwise, or a parcel that's been given to the county for natural lands? Are there any of that exists?
Yep, the short answer would be yes. And all of that would need to be pulled out, and obviously we need to examine each one of those cases.
So as we dig deeper, there's cuts that we may be discussing that actually can't be cut on certain properties because of the way that the county came by those properties and so forth. So I would very much like to know that. One thing I note, and I'm not advocating that we do this, but the delivery method of the services in this division. One's a fee-based. I've heard nothing about a fee-based schedule. Again, I'm not advocating for that, but I think if we're going to decide and make decisions, that should be part of the discussion. I'm not necessarily in favor of that, but I think that should be full discussion.
Commissioner Zimbauer, I think the county manager is,
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. And Commissioner, you're right on track, and that is part of, when we looked at if Amendment 3 goes forward, that would be part of our first phase to bring back, and that is to the point of this board, if it's something, a critical service that the board needs and wants to continue with, along with the, of course, residents and business owners, another revenue source would have to come, we'd have to come up with a fee or something regarding to keep that service available. So those options would be presented if this goes forward.
Great. The thing that makes this so difficult for this county is when I came on this board back in 2018, there had not been enough decisions made to turn this ship after the depression of 2008 and 2009, the big crash. So this county was already working with not enough employees, not enough capital assets, tens of millions of dollars of deferred improvements to the capital assets that taxpayers had already paid for over the previous 30 years. We're just now, in the last couple of years, getting back to a level of service with our employees, taking care of those deferred improvements to those capital assets that left deferred for 10, 20 years. And here we are. I make no argument that there are probably entities out there in this state that spend like drunken sailors. This is not one of them. In an organization, whether it's a business or otherwise, you can only cut your way out of overhead so far. You either have to increase revenue, and I would say we're pretty darn efficient at this county. Are there some things we could go without and our citizens may not lose their complete mind over? Probably a few, but not to the magnitude of the percentages that we're talking here. So I would also like to see a breakdown over the last, say, 10 to 15 years of the state mandates and the costs associated with that, because I think there is a fair conversation that this really needs to start at the state level, since they have so much money in their budget, and they've been paying down all their, outstanding debts, but yet pushing over to us and cities mandates that we are funding here locally, and understand what those are. That would be very helpful to have that monetized for this discussion as we move further. But thank you. I know this is tough work. We appreciate you all doing this. What makes matters even more complicated for, I guess, our staff, we started a discussion about efficiency before efficiency was a thing. I think 2 or 3 years ago, we started this discussion in our annual retreat and charging our staff with going back and bringing forward any efficiencies they could find within their divisions and bring that back to the commission. We've had that discussion each and every year, and then we cut and we cut and we cut. Reality is you can't provide services if you don't have the personnel and the funding to do it. And I think that's ultimately what the questions are going to come down to for our voters. And so it's going to be a tough decision, when they go to the end of the polls to make their decision. So it is our job to educate them, and thank you all very much for doing the hard work, and unfortunately spending a lot of taxpayers' dollars digging into this to bring this forward, but it's rightfully done to educate our public. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
just like to provide a little bit of clarity in terms of, I think on either slide 15 or page 553 of the book, there is a reference to unfunded mandates. It's sitting at 5% of the 562 million, so we have a number, roughly 28 million by my count. Are you looking for detail behind the 28 million?
I'm looking for detail and specifically what those are.
Okay. Yeah.
We can provide that.
They
We
are
can get
right
that
there.
history.
So Commissioner Zimbauer, so are you looking for in each one of these categories? For the
Correct.
slide that he has on the screen?
Correct.
The breakdown by dollar amount?
I'll make it easy, line item detail for all unfunded mandates. That would be helpful for me.
All right, any further discussion? All right. County Manager?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Durer. Next, we'll have Public Works, Ms. O'Lory.
The property tax funded budgets for our transportation services total $58.6 million. This includes 164 full-time positions. A 20% proportionate share reduction equates to $11.7 million.
Tim, could you pull the mic
Sure,
closer?
excuse me.
Thank you.
The $58 million makes up approximately 11% of our property tax revenues.
Perfect. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission, as well as County Manager. I'm Tawny O'Lory. I'm the Director of Public Works here at Seminole County. Before we begin, I was putting this presentation together. Transportation is the backbone of our community. It's the not of Seminole County, it's of every community out there. And as we travel on city roads or county roads or state roads, it all works together, right? We provide choices. So our signal timing needs to work together. Our turn lanes from our road to a city road needs to work together. So as we go through this presentation and we talk about potential service reductions, it's not just going to affect our roads, but it is going to have an impact on all of our transportation system, whatever that may be, whether you're taking Sunrail and, those lights and all the signals coming down. It all works together, and we spent a lot of money to ensure that we move people effectively. And so as we go through these services, I just want sort of us to keep that in mind, because we're going to affect all of transportation with any kind of reduction. I was here in July, and we talked a lot about some of the information we're going to see today. I do want to just comment real quickly on something that Commissioner Zimbauer talked about, just getting back to, pre-recession. At Public Works, we have about 150 people. We are not back to pre-recession numbers at this point. Right. So all of the services that we provide, those are with numbers, that we haven't, while we continue to put infrastructure out there, we really haven't grown. So we're really, really, as you said, working very effectively, and we don't have a lot of fat. Right. We are into the bone as we talk about service reduction. So I just wanted to make sure. So at the county, we provide the maintenance of all of our county road and stormwater system maintenance. And you hear a lot about system, because all of this works together, and it's really important. As I indicated in July, we maintain over 1,900 lane miles of road. That's over 2,700 roadways that we touch. We repair over 1,000 potholes a year. We maintain over 900 sidewalks, as well as maintaining over 130,000 feet of ditches and canals. Our traffic management system has 419 signals. We maintain, as we indicated in July, city signals, state signals, and county signals. We also maintain over 32,000 signs and 450 miles of infrastructure, fiber infrastructure. Thank you, Tim. Tim is my Vanna. We also provide all the inspection and maintenance of our bridges, all of the trails that Rick just got done and that have those bridges. We inspect those and maintain those. Our capital improvement program and our construction management, that's funded by our 1 cent sales tax. But remember, the people that manage all of that are from our property taxes. So if we have reduction, we won't be able to manage as much as we have in the past. We also, as people come into, and I know you all get so many calls, and we do too, of all the right-of-way permitting, we manage all of that. And really, remember for post, especially right now, post-hurricane disaster response, Public Works is first out on the scene, right? We are clearing the roads for our emergency response. We are assessing flooding. We are closing roads if there's flooding. And so we are first out on the scene for that post-hurricane response. And then while Public Works doesn't manage all of the mass transit services that is provided here in the county, it is certainly a transportation service. And we do have 3 systems that we fund here in the county to move people, which is what we need to do. So as we talk about service, so this is sort of the glum part of the presentation as Rick had. As we talk about the service reductions of 20%, and again, remember, it's into the bone, there is no fat here. We would propose to immediately freeze positions if this passes in November. Now, that's going to have an effect. Just because this won't go into effect until 2028, freezing positions have an effect because we won't be able to provide the level of service that our residents and visitors are used to. Cutting that 20% would mean about 26 FTEs. And like Rick, and like what was talked about during Rick's presentation, we also have outside vendors who perform services for us. This will have an impact to them. Also, our suppliers, we buy a lot of fiber. We buy, traffic signals. We buy, sand for our sandbags. So all of that has an impact. So it's not just here in Seminole County and our people. So the next part of the presentation is really to talk about the reduction of services and what the 20% would mean. And as you said, it was not a fun day when we talked about this a few days. This is not what we want to do. This is not what we want to present. But this will be the consequences of a 20% cut. So in terms of our flood control stormwater system, we would have to have less frequent cleaning of our ditch and culverts, okay? And as you know, when you don't have the clearing and the cleaning, that just has a lot of clogging, means more flooding. So we just wouldn't have necessarily the personnel or the supplies to be able to do it. We'd also have to provide less frequent cleaning and clearing of our retention ponds and our canal maintenance. That would mean more sediment going into our system, which would means it would just create more impacts of flood. And Kim is coming up after me, but really a lot more sediments that are getting into our system, which means more pollutants going into our lakes and so that's just another effect of these cuts, not being able to keep up with our infrastructure. Right now, we pride ourselves on if we get a call for a pothole repair, over 1,000, repaired a year, we respond within 24 to 48 hours. We would have to, lengthen that response to a week or more, and we would really have to prioritize that on safety. Those potholes would have to get big enough for us to be able, because we've won't have as much personnel to be able to respond to that. We're looking at doubling the time of mowing. We do 6 cycles of mowing our slopes a year and 9 on flat surfaces, 9 cycles. So you're talking, only the slopes getting mowed 3 times a year and the flat 4 or 5 times a year. And that's mainly done by outside services. So that's not necessarily our folks. So again, the impacts outside of Seminole County. We would also eliminate supplemental. So we do, our personnel do go out to places if we get complaints or if there's a public safety nuisance, we will go out there and do supplemental mowing. We would eliminate that. We would reduce the ability to repair our curb and gutter. And of course, with our gutter, again, that's a system, right? The water has to flow through the gutters to get into the storm drain, to get into our ponds. And so when you have that kind of cracking and not being able to repair it, that whole flow is impeded. We would propose to eliminate street sweeping, and so that, again, would mean more debris into our stormwater system, which impacts Kim, and she's going to, because they do get credits with the BMAP and all of that, and of course, the cleanliness of our roadways won't look as great as they do today. We would also limit tree trimming and removal, and just really prioritize based on safety risks. We just removed quite a large oak tree in the last couple weeks, and we were worried for the safety of pedestrians, and so we would prioritize that. We would also reduce the annual roadway striping by half. So this year, we're on track to stripe about 50 miles. We also do 300-plus arrows and other symbols, so we would reduce all that by half, and that's a lot with all of the rain and the night and things like that. It's just reduced visibility as well as our pedestrians, so we would, of course, prioritize that for our pedestrian safety. We would also limit our guardrail and handrail repairs. Again, we would have longer response times. We would put everything, of course, log it in, and just really prioritize on public safety. Right now, we do about $2 million a year on sidewalk repair. $1 million comes out of our penny, another $1 million comes out of our general revenue. We would just do $500,000. So Florida is beautiful. People use our sidewalks, but we would have to really prioritize that repair. In terms, so that's sort of the roadway and our flood, or our stormwater system. Now moving on to our traffic signals. We talked about this, I think, in July, as well as just earlier. We do maintain and a lot of signals for our cities and the state. We do get dollars to do that. We would have to reduce our traffic signal maintenance. And what does that mean? If there's a problem with the signal maintenance, it would go on flash, which is never a good thing with moving people around this county, until we could get out there to repair it. One of the things that we said that we would do also was evaluate all our traffic signals and see if there are any ones that are sort of on those secondary roads and turn those back into four-way stops, because we will not have the personnel to be able to maintain all those signals. We would also reduce the traffic signal retiming. I talk a lot about that. That's a big benefit for us, to be able to sort of time those lights. It moves traffic through the area very effectively during peak hour. We would have to reduce that and rely more on our partners, MetroPlan, FDOT, which doesn't necessarily mean that Seminole County retiming will be their top priority as it is ours. In terms of our traffic management system, so we do a lot, and we use outside consultant services. When we see that we do have a problem during peak hour, we do a lot of traffic studies, and to see if we have to increase the length of a turn lane, or if we need a turn lane, we would reduce that a lot. So that just means any complaints or that we see as a problem during peak hour, we would just have to put it as a prioritized list. As well as our traffic data collection, all those little tubes we put out there to see how our level of service is and our roadways, we would reduce that as well, which is outside vendors. In terms of street lights, we would limit the lighting to critical locations, maybe reduce the amount of time the street lights are on, and may remove some of those streetlights based on an evaluation. As I mentioned earlier, we have about 32,000 signs in this county. We have them all GIS. When they go down, we make new ones, we replace them, and that's part of our traffic management system, so people know what our speed limits are, what our, no U-turns, things like that. We wouldn't be as able to respond as quickly as we do today. And this county has spent, 450 miles of fiber in a county. That's a lot of fiber. We have spent a lot of money through the first, the 1 penny sales tax, putting all of those signals into fiber. We would look to reduce that maintenance, which means that we wouldn't be able to communicate necessarily with our traffic signals if they go down. And all of our county infrastructure, like our buildings and stuff, is also all on the fiber system. So that would have an impact to our day-to-day operations. We also provide a lot of support services. The survey we have in our roads and stormwater section really provides services throughout the county, not just for public works. We would look to reduce those services, which means if anybody needs survey, and they would probably have to contract them through outside contractors. We would also eliminate our community service worker program, which means the reduction of the ability to pick up trash and litter, which is significant for a lot of reasons, because that greater, bigger pieces of debris, becoming projectiles during storms, as well as getting into our stormwater system and causing clogs and not being able to move that water. And then finally, I know, and I've mentioned this before, our engineering really provides a lot of services to your offices in terms of if a resident comes in and has some questions or has a problem, we really send our engineers out to assess it and to see what can be done, as well as our roads and stormwater folks. And we would just not have the ability to respond as quickly as we do today. And then finally, I wanted for this portion is to really end on the hurricane disaster. All of these reductions, as you can see, will have an impact on our ability to respond. If we don't have the staffing that we have today to be able to get out there and remove that debris, the old timers, we like to call it cut and push. We cut the debris and we push it out of the way for Chief Kinley and our Sheriff's Department to be able to get to those people in need after a storm, and this would be reduced. Moving on to our mass transit. As you know, we do still have about $3 million worth of fixed routes that are going into Orange County. We would assess that and look to either eliminate that or reduce it. Paratransit is about $8.7 million. That's really a federal sort of mandate. We would try to look and see what we could do to see how we could reduce that as well. Sunrail is about $11.3 million bill, and I know we've heard a lot of people say, well, just give it back to the state, and that is, of course, a policy decision. But remember, by agreement, any reductions to Sunrail means it comes out of Seminole County's work program. And so any improvements that DOT has in the work program, whether it's resurfacing, whether it's capacity, that would be reduced by the amount that that DOT would be paying for Sunrail. So again, it's a reduction of transportation services in Seminole County. Finally, for Scout, 20% reduction would mean to either eliminate service or reduce the number of vehicles, which means the wait times would increase. Right now, the July average was about 42 minutes, so that would more than likely increase for that wait time. And finally, I just wanted to end on this slide. I showed this slide to you in July. We move a lot of people and vehicles a day in Seminole County, whether that's on county roadways, on city roadways, state roadways, all of the service impacts that we just discussed will have an impact on the ability to move that many people through our county effectively and efficiently. So with that, I will try to leave on a high note. We did have a department meeting last Thursday, a department-wide, to go over this presentation, because we didn't want this presentation to be the first that our folks, and I feel is our best asset is our people. And we had, of the 150 people, about 130 people there at our extension services. And they asked a lot of good questions, and Chris Patton was there with all of the material, and there wasn't one piece of material left that Chris brought. And they wanted to know what this means, because they wanted to educate the residents and the people they interact with on a daily basis of what that would mean for them. And so I'm just so proud of the Public Works Department, because they really, truly care about this community, and they really want to do the best job, and they want the residents to know what this could look like. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zimbauer.
I've got a couple for you all and then for the county attorney in this regards. And I respect your input and everything that you and your staff have put together. And you've been in this business for quite some time.
Very
not only
long
in this
time.
county.
Are you trying to ask my age?
No, I'm not. I was trained by 3 very fine women, not to go down that path. But you've worked for a much larger organization in public service than Seminole County, correct?
Yes.
How many times in all the years that you've been in this role have you received a call from somebody that says, don't fix the pothole or don't fix the sidewalk?
Never.
Has that ever occurred?
Never.
After a hurricane or storm, have you ever received phone calls saying, hey, don't remove the debris, just leave it there for a couple months and let it rot a little bit?
Never.
Never happened?
These are easy questions.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just trying to obviously make a point, but going to the county attorney, if we do arrive at a point where some of these assets have to not be repaired, whether it be sidewalks, potholes, and so forth, what liability, if any, do the taxpayers have? And I ask this question because, as the chair knows, the chair usually gets notice of lawsuits regarding sidewalks and fences and potholes and so forth. Is there a liability there, a cost to the taxpayer?
I mean, Commissioner, generally speaking, when you're making changes and reducing services, government services, that's a discretionary planning function of the government, which the government is immune from that kind of liability. The risk is when we're changing these, mowing schedules or, road repair schedules, we need to make sure we accurately and promptly reflect our policies, our schedules, because if we're not meeting those schedules once they've been changed, that's where the liability comes in. If we say we're going to mow every three months and we don't, and then there's an accident based on a visibility issue, that exposes the county.
Sure.
However, so if we're going to reduce services, we need to make sure that all of our policies, all of our schedules are updated to reflect the reduction in schedules and reduction in services, but just changing those policies standing alone is a discretionary government function for which the county is immune.
Maybe my question wasn't quite spelled out well enough.
Well, I thought that was a really great answer.
It was fantastic. So if we decide we're not fixing sidewalks because there's no money there to do it, and somebody trips or falls, breaks an ankle, breaks whatever, do we have any responsibility there? Because we didn't fix it?
I mean, of course, this is a lawyer answer. Every case is different. But, if we're put on notice that a sidewalk is hazardous and then somebody falls and hurts themselves, we definitely have liability there. But again, you go back to on what schedule is the county supposed to be inspecting and repairing their sidewalks. So I would go back to making sure that however often we intend to do it, however often we can afford to do it, that our policies reflect that.
Great. Well, Thank you very much. I appreciate the answers from both. It's just to flush those out so the public is fully aware, what some of this stuff really means. I mean, it's the things that aren't said sometimes that you need to worry about versus the things that are said. But good work. I appreciate, the deep dives you've done and working through that. I reflect back, like 2018 or 2019, we had a discussion, and Commissioner Lockhart and I were fairly new here. We had started getting complaints as new commissioners about the infrequency of mowing the medians and the sides of the roads because of the 2009, 2008 downturn. The county made a decision to only do it, I guess, twice a year instead of the 6 times a year or 3 times a year versus 6. And I think we're finally just recently, in the last couple of years, gotten back to the previous schedule that, which, we had complaints about rodents and mice and things running around out of these things in people's yards, and just complaining it doesn't look worth a hoot when they're going to their home or their office, so forth. So, good information.
Commissioner Delary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So let's go back a little further, back in the early 2000s. The policy of the county back then used to be if you call in a pothole by 9 a.m., it was fixed by 5 p.m. That was the policy. And county staff did a phenomenal job in doing that. And then around 07, 08, that had to change. And then each budget session since then, it's changed quite a bit. Also going back then, there was a large discussion in 07, I think it was, where we talked about stormwater fees, because the 7 cities have stormwater fees and the county staff. The county does not have a stormwater fee. We pay for stormwater out of our general fund and out of the 1-cent sales tax. And I'm not going to go into details, but you can all watch the tapes. We actually talked about a stormwater fee, and it was packed. And what I mean by packed, we literally had to set up chairs and in tents because people were being bussed in from all around the county. And we did not move forward with that, but it's always been an issue out there because the county does not have a stormwater fee and the 7 cities do. So we pay for it out of our general fund. I just want to make sure that that's out there because I don't want to go there. I've already lived through it a couple times.
I was one of the ones in the parking lot that couldn't get a seat in there.
I understand that, and we won't go into those details, but I do have a couple questions. When it comes to stormwater and TMDLs, are we required to maintain our TMDLs, total maximum daily loads of pollutants, at a certain level, and is that required by state and federal?
Yes, so I think for Kim.
And if we're going to address that later on.
Yeah, that's in her presentation.
Yeah, that's part of her
But you did talk about stormwater, that's why I'm bringing it to you.
Yeah.
And then the next question I have is, when you talk about road maintenance, how would that be addressing on emergency vehicles' response times, and how would that affect us?
Yeah, that's a good question because, so like I said, we would have to set standards as going with county attorney on what is public safety and.
So that's later on,
yeah.
okay. And then the next question I have is when it comes to road maintenance and lack thereof, how does that affect the economic viability of a business, of people getting to and from those businesses?
It's the backbone, transportation, as I said, yeah.
I understand that, but that will be reviewed and evaluated at a later date?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Walker.
Going back to the ice cube tray, want to ask you if you all have fully evaluated all of the projects that are maintenance and various and sundry other things that you are doing in public works that are currently being spent out of the general fund that could be shifted to the sales tax. Understanding that the sales tax is for capital and isn't supposed to be used for ordinary maintenance, or can't be used for ordinary maintenance, have you evaluated any opportunities of shifting from general fund to the sales tax?
So I think this county, and just coming in here, you have already done that. Okay, so for example, the resurfacing program is out of the sales tax, not out of the general fund. The sidewalk repairs that we talked about, a portion of that is from the sales tax. So a lot of what we have already, have already implemented is part of that. The routine maintenance is what comes out of the general fund. So we've already really, you've got a lot of that already shifted now. When you talk about lean, mean, fighting, I mean, this is what you guys have already operated under, and efficiently and effectively. But then for cuts, it's really right into the bone.
Okay. I wanted to make sure we got that on the record because I think there is a lot of misconception about which revenues can be used for what types of services. And someone might say, well, all of these sidewalk repairs, just do them out of the penny sales tax. And it has been made very clear to us as a board, and I'm not sure that all of our citizens fully grasp what revenues can be spent on which expenditures. And so if we're extending the life of a capital asset, we can use penny sales tax. Is that correct?
Correct.
But if it's routine maintenance, we cannot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. That's a big distinction in these conversations. I think it's important that we continue to educate on that piece. Thank you.
Well, and I'll pick up from there and say I think another big distinction is that we actually are very aggressive about operating within the rules of governance. We don't go into the warnings track just by the nature of all five of us. And so something that keeps resonating with me about this is the fact that the impact of this on a county that operates efficiently and operates very, very clearly within the rules and boundaries of the governance is probably most harmed.
Amen.
And so one of the questions that I have for either Ms. O'Lore or you, Mr. Gray, you've both been in other counties. How do we compare from a staffing perspective?
When is your evaluation again?
Nothing like being on the spot.
No, I'm putting you on the spot because I think the point is really important to the Seminole County residents that we have done what we can do. There's always room for improvement. We look for it every year, to Commissioner Zembauer's point. But, I mean, I'm out there. I deal with, I look at censuses for a living. So I can answer this question myself, but you two are experts, and you see it as it relates to the operations of a county.
And I'll go first, and I'll let Ms. O'Lore for her experience. And as you said, I've been, I think, at every county in Central Florida, so I know a lot about how they're funded. This county, I was very amazed when I came in, when I did my really audit and sat down with Mr. Jackson. We went through each of the funds on how we provide services. What this county has done remarkable at is actually moved things that they possibly can out of property tax revenue into what we call a special revenue that is restricted, that can only be used for that source. And if you look at our general fund, and I would welcome anyone who wants to sit down, discuss. We're very transparent. We will open up everything. We will show them, and actually maybe even learn something from others that want to come and share that. And we did a lot of that last year, as you know, when we went through our budget process. But really, if you look at our general fund and the way our property taxes are allocated, it is clearly at bare bones. It is mostly public safety. It's sheriff and the fire department, emergency management. And again, we have looked at a lot of other special revenue opportunities that are restricted that could be used for services that we provide our residents and business owners. Other counties in Central Florida are going through the same thing. I personally, as a manager, have done that exercise, especially as we've talked about the downturn of the economy in 2008, 9, 10. We all had to go through that exercise. If you remember, during 2007, 8, we also had a mandatory rollback of millage rates from the state legislature, and that we had to go through that process. So it's almost every, probably, I'd say 5 to 10 years, we go through this process and we really look at it. But this county, of all the counties that I have worked in, has actually done a really remarkable job about really putting property tax dollars to direct services that really enhance the quality of life and emergency response here in the county.
Thank you. Anything to add? And you can say no.
No, I would say, as Commissioner Zimbauer so aptly, I've been around for a long time. But Seminole County has always been known for that fiscally responsible and really operating as a business. And it's known throughout the region for that. And as somebody mentioned, when you have a government operating like that, these kind of cuts are devastating because you don't have that fact. You don't. And so you just have to start cutting services. And that's not what we want to do at all, because we want to maintain the infrastructure that was built utilizing tax dollars as well. So
I would like to get a few things from a clarifying factor here on the record. You did mention that you would turn traffic signals into four-way stops in order to stop maintaining them, meaning the traffic signal would continue to blink? Take down a traffic signal that we've already paid for?
Yeah, we could, they could blink, or we would just shut it off, bag it, right?
Bag it.
So that could be done. Now, we don't want to do that. I mean, the traffic signal was warranted. These wouldn't be on your major arterials, obviously, more on the side streets, two-lane to two-lane type of thing.
So what I think is interesting about this discussion, there was also talk about streetlights and other assets that have already been purchased with taxpayer money, is that while we don't want to do that, and we may not do that, and I would tell you, I would personally try to figure out every way that we didn't have to do that. That could be expected in neighboring communities. So it is on the table. I think from an educational perspective, it's good to put it out there. I don't want anybody to panic about that happening here. But what I would say is very realistic, is that our look at mass transit needs to continue whether this passes or not. I think we're all aligned on that. I think that's one way to get ready for whatever happens, whether this passes or not. Something else will. And we're already ahead of that as well. Any other comments with regard to this?
I would just say that, following up on that, is that the public needs to understand, the five of us sitting here, I think we have a core value that money doesn't grow on trees. We're not wasting taxpayers' dollars, and we're probably one of us to raise the red flag if we see something that doesn't make sense from a financial feasibility or efficiency standpoint. And I'm as guilty as anybody else before I was in government and got to look behind the curtain. Government's always fat and happy and taking too many of my tax dollars. But you've heard me say it. My first budget session that I went through at this county, when I looked at everything, I said, y'all are so fiscally conservative, you're about to go out of business or no longer be able to supply the services you need to supply to these residents. And that was the truth. And finally, we've slowly come back to a reasonable level of service. But, I would invite any citizen to come walk with me through this building and see somebody goofing off, or a group of employees sitting around doing anything, not doing anything, because it's just not happening. If anything, they're running around with their hair on fire because they got too much to do and not enough staff to get it done. And I think that's a core principle we all hold up here on this dais. And like I said, there's always, one of us usually raises it when we see something, we say something. So to your point, we will be penalized if this passes, very much like when we put the officers in the schools, and we were one of the first, if not the first, in the state to do that. And then the state subsidized other counties to do it. We had already paid for it. We weren't going to get any money from the county or from the state. But our residents have time and again, with the proper information, proven to us they make the right decisions.
Yep.
And that's this part of this exercise, is to make sure they get as much information as we possibly can. So thank you again.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to move on to water quality and mosquito control.
Thank you.
Mosquito control through AI.
Up next is Water Quality Mosquito Control with Kim Ornberg. The total watershed management budget coming from property taxes is $3.1 million. The 20% reduction would be about $600,000, and their budget includes 21 full-time positions. This $3.1 million makes up about 0.5% of our total property tax revenues.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Okay, we'll start with our water quality. Once again, we all know the Seminole County motto is Florida's natural choice, which is so true because we have such an abundance of amazing natural resources that we enjoy and want to protect. So we'll start with some quick stats. We have over 200 named lakes, including our 3 Great Lakes, Lakes Jessup, Harney, and Monroe. Our major rivers include the St. Johns, which makes up the county's eastern and northern borders, and is where all the county's surface water eventually drains to. And here's a fun fact. It's one of only 14 rivers in the nation that's been designated an American Heritage River. Then there's the Big and Little Wekiva Rivers, which are designated as national, wild and scenic rivers, as well as state aquatic preserves and outstanding Florida waters. And finally, the Big and Little Econ-Lochthatchee, or Econ Rivers, which are also outstanding Florida waters. And now to our springs. Everyone's familiar with the Wekiwa Spring, a first magnitude outstanding Florida spring, but we have several others that range in size and magnitude, including San Lando, Palm, Clifton, Starbuck, and Little Ginger Ale. Altogether, there's about 22,000 acres, or 10% of the county, that's made up of surface water. So with all of these great natural resources, we have several programs that help us maintain and protect them. Our lake management program monitors and manages both public and private water bodies. We have a comprehensive water chemistry and biological monitoring program. We conduct investigations into illegal dumping and pollution discharges. We have an extensive public education and outreach program, which includes our public service announcements and our water atlas. Our shoreline protection program was initiated just a few years ago to help further safeguard our water bodies. And we also conduct large and small-scale restoration and capital projects like the one we just completed recently on the Little Wekiva. So, as you saw from the budget numbers, it's not a large program, but we have 10 full-time staff scientists and technicians and 2 part-time interns. We manage 26 lakes or chains of lakes through the county's MSBU program, which, as mentioned before, are self-taxing districts. Our staff collects an average of 9,000 water chemistry samples a year, conducts over 400 lake and 200 shoreline inspections, as well as over 200 educational events and 100 resident-requested environmental investigations each year. The program is primarily focused on the unincorporated areas, but our staff is always willing to help citizens, residents and citizens, regardless of where they live. Most of the program's activities actually positively impact the cities anyway because water doesn't know jurisdictional boundaries. And this is why we've established over the years interlocal agreements with our city and regional partners to work cooperatively together on protecting our water resources. The water quality program was started in the late 90s as a result of state and federal unfunded mandates and regulatory requirements, including the Federal Clean Water Act, the state's Impaired Waters Rule, water quality criteria, and basin management action plans, which identify regional strategies to protect and restore our water bodies. And as you can see from the colors on this map, about 2/3 of the county falls into an impaired watershed. In the nearly 3 decades since the program's inception, we have seen significant improvements in our stormwater runoff and in many of our natural systems through education, collaboration, monitoring, and restoration. But we still have farther to go. So, what are the impacts to the program? We would likely see reductions in our current service levels, including to our monitoring network, our education, and a more limited ability to assist and provide free technical advice to our residents. We may have to scale back the program to maintain only minimum regulatory compliance required instead of the holistic cooperative watershed approach we currently have in place. Ultimately, this could result in less protection of our natural systems and could lead to degraded water quality with potentially higher long-term costs to the community in order to meet these water quality standards, because the cost of cleanup and restoration is more expensive and difficult than the cost of prevention. Especially this ties into what Tawny was talking about with reductions in maintenance as well. We may end up having to seek alternative funding sources in order to meet the long-term regulatory compliance and to maintain the established levels of service. All right, now on to our mosquito control program. And while this is not a state or federally mandated program, it is a state certified program, which receives a small amount, about $60,000 a year from the state. The mission of the program is to protect the health and well-being of our residents through the control of mosquitoes and mosquito-borne illnesses. The current program was created about 20 years ago and established a proactive, science-based, integrated pest management program that's data-driven and uses the most environmentally friendly products available, which are tested continually and rotated to ensure effectiveness. Listed here are some of the activities within our program. We have our surveillance, which includes sentinel chickens, mosquito traps, landing rates, and mosquito identification using our new AI-assisted system, which you may have seen recently on the local news. We have source reduction, larviciding, which is the most efficient way to eliminate mosquito populations before they reach adulthood, and targeted fogging, which is the activity most people are familiar with, and an extensive public education program, including public service announcements, individual residential inspections, and educational door hangers that identify breeding habitats. So our mosquito control program, unlike the water quality, is a county-wide program and includes all 7 cities in addition to the incorporated areas. Our team assists our nearly 500,000 residents and covers the entire 220,000 acres of the county. This is all accomplished by a very small, mighty, and efficient team of only 10 full-time employees. When compared to other mosquito programs, our current program, the cost per resident and per acre are the lowest in the region. And as you can see, we accomplish quite a bit every year with this team. They address over 2,000 customer service requests. They fog over 160,000 acres, larvicide around 8,500 acres of standing water, and respond to an average of 13 disease vector each year. I'd say these are pretty impressive statistics for only 10 people. All right, so what are the potential impacts to the program? As with all the other programs, we would likely see a reduction in our current service levels. The most visible reduction would be to our fogging program due to chemical costs and the cost of extended staff hours needed to complete the missions at the current levels. Our staff provides fogging services not only to neighborhoods, but for special events like the 4th of July, as well as to our sports complexes, the zoo, and to the airport. Our ability to respond to resident requests could also be reduced. Budget reductions may result in a shift from the current prevention-focused mission, or proactive, to an outbreak response-driven program, more reactive. This could ultimately lead to increased mosquito populations and a higher risk of mosquito-borne diseases. And again, alternative funding sources would need to be considered in order to continue the current county-wide service and response levels. So that's all I have, but I conclude my presentation. But if reaching back to what was asked as far as when Tawny was speaking, the NPDES has a minimum maintenance requirements for the stormwater systems, But again, with all of our programs, we try to do, more than the minimum, and responses, that would have a negative impact on those, so.
So we do more than the minimum to keep our water clean.
Yes,
Let's hope we don't get faulted for that.
agreed.
Then you could be the hero to come in and save our water after it gets ruined. Let's not do it that way. All right, commissioners, any comments? Yes.
I noticed both Kim and Tawny, and I don't remember if Rick said this or not, but I've noticed a couple of times, the last slide identified, we'll have to find alternative funding. Can you tell me what you're envisioning as alternative funding, and why would we not be seeking that already?
But as you know, so the state sets up how we receive money through, and there's only two ways that local governments receive dollars, and it's through taxes or fees. That's all what it is. There are another, what we call non-ad valorem fees that could actually be used instead of ad valorem property taxes. And so that is, whereas a service, when it's assessed, right now, we use our property tax dollars for public safety, but there are other options that we could use that could actually be a non-property tax or what they call non-ad valorem fee that the board then would have to discuss. We'd have to do a study to ensure the equity of it and things like that. So that's it'd be a whole nother process. But the state, they do allow us to go that avenue. So that's one. Other, as we always seek, is grants and other special revenue opportunities. The city managers, myself, all got together a month, 6 weeks ago to talk about, again, we continue this dialogue all the time about sharing of services, things of that nature as well. So the state has a book of revenues. I forget it's called, the local government revenue, the green book, that has, because we're restricted to exactly the revenues that the state allows us to collect. So we would, and some of them don't pertain to us at all, but I would say, half of them probably could, and that would be another exercise that our staff and that we would have to talk to the board about, but other revenue opportunities that could come into the county. It's complicated, and right now it's the series of going through that is very extensive. So it could not happen overnight. It would need probably a good 6 months to a year discussion on how we get to the end.
So a potential for some grants here and there, but if I'm just reading between the lines and saying it very plainly, it would still be our citizens paying for it, but out of a different pocket.
Correct. And some citizens who could actually maybe benefit from this property tax amendment 3 could actually be paying more for this new type of source that we would have to fund.
Okay.
Be more like a user fee?
Correct. And I'll get off my soapbox in it.
No,
The cost
stay on.
is what the cost is.
Right.
And I'll tell you, the private sector a lot of times dictates the cost that we provide to our residents because all of our supplies, materials come from the private sector. Again, we don't make anything. All we do is deliver services to our residents and business owners. So usually the private sector establishes what that is. We have to competitively bid that, meaning we can't make deals behind the scene. It's all publicly bid out, and that's negotiated out in public, and then we move forward with that.
Follow-up? So I'm assuming we've already looked and highlighted in the Green Book those potential additional fees that would be appropriate in Seminole, maybe appropriate's the wrong word, allowable
Yes.
in Seminole County. At what point after November 3rd, should this pass, will we start digging into that so that this board has the opportunity?
Right.
Because you're saying you need a 6 months to a year lead
Yes,
time. Do you have a date in
Yeah,
mind?
absolutely. And as Mr. Jex put out on one of his earlier slides, so if this passes, and I know I've spoken with each of you, in fact, the chairman and I just spoke about this recently, is that we would immediately come in January to talk to, you're correct, this is not something that we're just sitting idle and then just waiting if this happens. That's why we're having these hearings right now. We're already looking at, okay, if this happens, then what else needs to occur? So January, we will already start that discussion with the board, a public meeting discussing. For one, just think about fire. I mean, right now, fire is funded through our MST, our property taxes for fire. There is an opportunity where you can do a fire fee, but that fire fee is restricted. That can only be for fire operations. It cannot be used for say, paramedics or anything medical. So that would have to have another fee that attached to it. So a lot of these are a combination of fees that would have to come in to make that function whole, if you will. So, but to answer your question, immediately we would start in January, because what my goal would then be, by the time we hit our budget work sessions in the summer, next summer, you will already have a road path and a path forward of how you want us to move forward on not only what services you want, but how we would fund those services. And the level of how we fund it.
All right, thank you.
So I think the simplified answer to that question is the pre-work is already being done at the
Correct.
staff level, so that if we get to a yes in November, it starts right
Correct.
immediately of now what do we do?
Right.
And that includes involving citizens in terms of input and what do you want us to take away, what do you want us to keep, and how do you want, it's going to have to be funded somehow, all of those discussions that we've had here already. So this, part of the reason why we're doing these hearings is to be extremely proactive, so at the point that they're ready to bring it back to us, it's not the first time we're hearing all this.
Correct.
It's to speed to market concept
Right.
of being ready to act effectively.
And then to identify, one of the things that I guess, exercises we went through as a team, all of our managers, directors, we had probably 60 to 70 people going through this. What would the experience be for a resident or business owner if this was to pass on a service level? And that's what we want to communicate today. Not how, if this does pass, how would we fix it in a sense, but what would the service level look like if this was to pass? And that's the purpose. And then if it does pass, then you're right, Commissioner Lockhart and the chair, is that we would then have to have a series of budget work sessions on, all right, if the community and the board wants this service, at what level, what type of fee would we have to maintain that level at or charge at?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Zimbauer.
I would just, dovetailing into that, we are in a much better position, in my opinion, than many other entities.
Yeah.
Because this board has pushed this staff for multiple years to bring efficiencies forth every single year during budget time in advance. So we're constantly looking at those efficiencies as we move forward. So it's not something that, this staff is like, oh my gosh, we've never done this before. Now what do? They do that by nature because this board insists that be done. So I think to everybody's point, we are starting early. It is well thought out, and as things go, we'll be prepared to hit the accelerator when it needs to be.
Well, and it's a little bit of a double-edged sword.
Right.
We have been very effective, and we do this as a regular course of action in every budgeting cycle, and that's been expected for years and years. We're coming out of a time frame when there was what I would call hyper-conservatism that actually let current assets go
too long,
untended, and now we're faced with, can we cut further? And we don't want to go back to where we were.
Correct.
And so we've been there and know the outcome of that. So we are really ahead of the game and know that action has to happen. And that's exactly the path that we're on. Was that raising a hand or pointing it? No. You?
You can point
It's
at
for
me.
your own. You.
But
Got it.
I do have to leave a little early before lunch because I've got a commitment I can't miss.
Okay. From a process technical perspective, should these additional fees or assessments be a direction that this board goes, will those show up on residents' property tax bills like their garbage currently does? Or how would we collect them?
There's multiple ways. Some of them are required to do that, and some of them are not. So it just depends on which scenario we would move forward with.
Okay.
So both.
Another opportunity for education, because I think sometimes because we stack different things, MSBUs, on the property tax bill, people look at, oh my gosh, my taxes went up, and it wasn't their ad valorem taxes, it was the services that they're paying for, but they're paying for it on their tax bill. So I just wanted, I'm thinking ahead to the phone calls that are coming.
Yes.
Okay.
I think one of the challenges that we had when we were looking at the millage rate is that there's no apples-to-apples comparison out there, is that others move things in and out of those buckets very readily.
Right.
I would offer to you, if you look in some of our neighboring communities, they're very adept at this. So there's probably lessons to be learned on all of the other line items that are applicable. With that, can we close this portion of the discussion and move on to the next?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, let's do it. All right, Allison, we're pretty worn out, so bring us home.
Our final department presentation is for Community Services, led by Director Allison Thal.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. The property tax funded budgets for community service is $7 million. This includes 54 full-time positions. A 20% proportionate share reduction would equate to $1.4 million.
Thank you, Commissioners. Oh, I'm not, sorry, you're not
One more
finished.
slide.
Sorry.
The $7 million budget
My slice of pie.
makes up approximately 1% of our property tax revenues.
It's the little tiny blue one.
It's the little tiny blue one.
And Allison, pull that mic up when you will.
Will do.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tim. I'm excited to get this over with for everybody. I feel like I'm the icing on the cake of a very three-tiered depression cake, but I'll be brief. So thank you, Commissioners. Allison Thal. I'm the Director for the Department of Community Services. And Community Services encompasses, as you know, a wide range of services aimed at improving the well-being of individuals, families, and communities. Our funding specifically addresses direct services, including low-income rental and utility assistance, locating housing for families at risk of becoming homeless, as well as funding our local nonprofit organizations for services such as childcare, after-school programming, meals for at-risk seniors, attainable housing initiatives, and the support of our county homeless shelters, including the Rescue Outreach Mission, Safe House, Recovery House, and Boys Town. So in anticipation of the unknown and in the spirit of being proactive, we too have identified a few immediate cost-saving measures that could be implemented in fiscal year 2027. These include freezing 4 of our currently vacant positions, suspending our Attainable Housing Trust Fund awards, and deferring our homeless support spending, which are funds that we earmark specifically for emergency hoteling of families and deposit assistance for families who we're actively working with. Now, for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to share the very personal impact of the anticipated reduced funding in total over the 2 upcoming fiscal years, meaning fiscal year 2028 and 2029. As you're already aware, our Community Assistance Division does provide the direct service by way of individual assistance programs for past due rent and utility assistance, as well as our homeless individual grant. Our individual assistance programs currently funded at just over $578,000 a year. These funds are used exclusively to provide past due rent and utility assistance to low-income individuals and families. We currently serve roughly 227 households, or about 491 individuals each year with these funds. By fiscal year 2029, with reduced funding, more than 83 of these households will now face homelessness. Our homeless individual grant programs currently funded at a little over $193,000 a year. We currently actually locate and assist over 300 homeless or borderline homeless families and individuals with finding and or keeping safe and secure housing. Without our current funding level, over 100 individuals, including children, will either become or remain homeless. Additionally, Community Services administers the annual Community Services Assistance, or CSA grants. We're typically awarded $842,000 a year to place back into the community to serve our residents. As you can see from the list on the screen, we assist a full cross-representation of the residents of our county with our grant funds, from senior citizens to our working families to teens, right down to our most vulnerable children. The homeless shelters you see listed each specialize in sheltering unique demographic populations. So the impact of the reduced or eliminated CSA funding will ultimately directly affect an estimated 750 individuals, children, and family collectively. Those hit hardest are going to be the homebound seniors who will no longer receive meals, families who will not be able to secure food for their families or children, children losing after-school programs, child victims of sexual assault, and parents who have lost their employment because they can no longer obtain affordable child care. The 4 shelters alone will potentially need to turn away almost 500 individuals, including 120 children, and return them to the streets. So similar to the Community Assistance Division, the department's Community Health Division specializes in the delivery of support services largely to our senior citizens and our seriously mentally ill residents. Almost 800 individuals will lose direct engagement with staff for assistance addressing needs such as access to medical care, prescription assistance, housing, fall prevention, food insecurity, transportation. A significant number of our seniors will remain socially isolated, and just about all of our community outreach events for seniors will likely be eliminated. And over 500 seriously and persistently mentally ill individuals are going to lose access to transportation to medical appointments and crisis medical services. Furthermore, the funding that we will now no longer be able to provide to the health department will result in over 2,500 individual services, including dental health and diabetes education, essentially potentially being eliminated. Critical medical services like infectious disease testing, physical exams, immunizations, about 1,200 direct contact services, again, are going to be jeopardized. So as for attainable housing, the last of our substantially supported general fund programs, we would really have no choice but to recommend eliminating any funding assistance to our development partners for infrastructure and construction costs on any future attainable housing project. Although this may not stop the development of affordable housing, it will likely contribute to the reduction of the current rate of construction, simply compounding the ongoing lack of affordable housing in Seminole County. This concludes my presentation.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Why didn't she just say worst-case scenario?
Because I'm the icing.
I mean, that's what it sounds like, worst-case scenario.
Any other comments? I'll turn it back to you, County. Yes.
Just one minor technicality. So in your comments, you mentioned the 4 shelters, but on the slide, they aren't reflected as shelters. They say that they provide services. And I've had this conversation with a couple of folks in the community. Rescue Outreach Mission does a phenomenal job, and they are our only emergency shelter. But there are probably 100 or more folks housed at those other 3, probably 150 or more housed. I mean, they provide food and shelter and support services also. So I just want to continue to have that conversation and make sure it's reflected in the slides, is that
Yeah,
they are sheltering.
Yep.
Thank you, Allison, for being the icing.
Thank you, the chairman and the board and all of our team. I know this was a difficult exercise we all went through, but again, we want to talk about reality, and this is just not like, I think you had mentioned, Chairman, before about this is not, we're not saying the sky is falling. However, we want to be very proactive and prepare, and as you all have directed to me, we get our residents and business owners involved and being very transparent, and just saying that, you know, reality is what it is. And so with that, that's all of the departments we were going to have you present to you today. On the September 15th, which is our next board meeting, we will kick it off with public safety. We have invited the sheriff as well as Chief Kinley, the fire department, Mr. Alan Harris with emergency management, which really is the bulk of our property tax dollars and where they are allocated to. So I appreciate the time that you all had with us this morning, and again, we'll get to wherever we need to get to.
So I would just close the morning session by saying to all of you that did all of this hard work, including all of the people that are sitting at their desks watching this, we will make really good decisions on your behalf, not to worry. And that is why we're being as proactive as we're being, so that we're not crushed with last-minute decisions that could potentially happen. We'll take a very effective path to this, including all of the involvement of the teams. I applaud every member here that's brought their team into the meetings to have those discussions. And regardless of whether this passes or not, we need to keep having those discussions as we have in the past. Anything we can do to become more efficient and effective will benefit our citizens in the long run. And we've always done that, and we'll just keep doing that. So thank you to all of you, and I'll see you all at 1:30. Meeting adjourned.